Assalamu alaikum. Viewers, today we are joined by Shajee Amar Khan. He is a LUMS graduate, equity research, and he is an equity research analyst at a American-based firm. Assalamu alaikum, Shajee. Thank you for joining us today.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmad. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show.
Thank you. Today we are discussing about the future, how the possibly how the future economic regimes will look like, and how financial ecosystem will look like in post COVID-19 era. Shadi, please give us a sense how you see the future of financial ecosystem in post COVID-19 era, because we are witnessing a lot of changes and a lot of threats. Some people and scholars are talking about a few things that it is gonna hit more than the Great Depression. How you see this?
So, Ahmad, before we dig into how the situation is going to be post-COVID, we need to understand that how the situation was pre-COVID. Before this crisis that struck us, there was this very imperative study going on that how different economies are growing. One of those is that one of the striking fact is that Chinese economy was growing at around 8%, while the Indian and Bangladeshi economy was growing somewhere around 7 to 8%. And then finally, we have Russia, which is growing at around 4%. So for an economy, like for a situation like this, where these developing and emerging markets are growing at a starking levels, they were at its peak to, and the predictors were saying, especially the economic analysts were saying, that Chinese and Indian economies would eventually surpass the US economy. So those situations were then changed by the COVID-19 situation. Now, when we talk about the financial ecosystem, you might have heard that there were a lot of cryptocurrency regimes coming in. Back in February 2020, this Libra cryptocurrency regime that came in China was gaining a lot of traction. And given that they are legalizing the cryptocurrency and also encouraging the cryptocurrency, the comparison, when you look at the other world, specifically US and the Europe, they want to fight back, right? Because their economic system is already way behind. Like I said before, the Chinese economy is growing at 8%. That's another concerning factor. And now they're getting into the crypto market. The other countries also wanted to then get into the crypto market. Secondly, you would have seen that specifically in the global economic system, there's a lot of people moving towards e-commerce. They're moving towards the plastic money, or how do I call it? The use
Money.
of cards, use digital money, exactly. So given that situation, we have a changing environment in the world. Now, when we talk about the post-COVID situation, of course, given that how S&P Global Rating has recently given out their study that they say that, okay, the world economy is going to contract at 8% approximately. Now, that means that on an average, if let's say you're earning 100 rupees today, you'll be earning a 92 rupees next year, which means that you're losing 8 rupees. And that is because of coronavirus. So before I get there, that why is that happening? I hope that I'm able to explain the fact that how the world has changed and how it will change further. People will move to digital currencies, but again, whenever there is a change coming in, it isn't like it's going to be full of roses and rainbows. There has to be certain costs and certain pressures that are ongoing. So I hope that I explained that.
Thank you for this giving a background of this whole situation. But here the question comes: what intensity of the problems could be there in that post-COVID-19 era? Because we are seeing a blame game on international arena that China and America is playing a Cold War, a beginning of new Cold War that is purely economically driven. How you see where things will fall, and how this ecosystem will look like after the COVID-19?
So first of all, there are two things that are going on. First thing is that we are seeing a crisis coming in, right? The reason is that because of coronavirus, people are scared. There is a lot of demand contraction. People, despite the lockdowns being eased all around the world, people are still not willing to go out of their homes because of the fear that they have of catching coronavirus. And because of that demand contraction, the overall economy contracts. So there's this one point. The other point, when you talk about how the geopolitical system and the geoeconomic system is changing in terms of US and China more specifically, pre-COVID-19, you would have had seen that there was a lot of tensions going between US and China. There was this new Cold War, trade war going between the two countries, where USA does not want China to gain that fraction of the global economy that it is gaining. And and to do that, they were imposing trade embargoes and trade sanctions on China, which once were imposed on Iran are now being imposed on China. Now, one very important factor to understand here is, if you look at the trajectory of coronavirus, it attacked US back in February, somewhere around February, but it attacked China back in December. And there was a complete lockdown going on since January in China. But if you look at the numbers, specifically, let's say Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, etc., these are the big giants of the US. They were facing a lot of problems. Why? Because their businesses are already in China. So if you look at it, even if we look at the pre-COVID situation, China is already winning this war. US businesses are putting their plants, their businesses inside China. And then during the COVID-19 situation, when China was in lockdown and USA was not, USA took a hit. Why? Because the big giants the big giants in the US, their production plants were in China. So they were facing another problem. Now when post-COVID situation comes, China is already opened up. The world is now opening up, but China opened up 2 months ago. China is gaining that gap, that economic gap is there. So you see, given that situation, there's going to be a lot of disparity. Now, the third thing that I wanted to say over here was, USA has been in the #1 position since the Second World War. And no one ever since then has been able to overpower USA. Russia was there once, but then Russia failed miserably. And now Japan was there at some point, but then they didn't succeed as well. But China is the one that's closer to succeeding. And given the situation that US people are not very happy and they don't want anyone to surpass them, I'm pretty sure that this Cold War is going to take a different position. They would be imposing more trade sanctions on China. They would be, and China's going to react too. If you've seen news recently, China was importing oil from all over the world except for US. And why is the case? Because they were reacting to the trade sanctions that were imposed before. So if you look at from the geopolitical perspective, China and US tensions are growing. But if you look at from a strictly economic perspective, Chinese economy is going to grow as soon as they stabilize their economy. And that's going to take a year or two at max. So 5 years from today, my speculation is that 5 to 10 years from today, Chinese economy will be the largest economy in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for summing this up. But here the question comes, yeah, as we have explained that what could be the dominant force in global financial system. You have predicted that China in coming 5 to 10 years, China would be in that position. But do you see for these 5 to 10 years, the coming 5 to 10 years, how this economic ecosystem will work? Because there would be multipolarity in economic regimes also. If I may take the liberty to say this, but international trade system has been disrupted by this COVID-19, and the underdeveloped countries are suffering, has suffered a colossal damage because of this. And unemployment has the level of employment has rise with this all period. How you see the underdeveloping countries will take their side, whether they will go to US or they will go to China, or who will come to help them?
It, honestly speaking, it completely depends on who they can gain from. One example is, you would have recently seen that the Pakistani economy specifically, which is a developing economy and is an underdeveloped economy, rather, I would say. Pakistan just announced their budget, and they said that there was economic contraction that happened for the first time in the past 68 years. Now, if you look at it, and I'm just quoting this as an example only, this coronavirus situation for economies like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh is an opportunity. Why is the case? Because Pakistan, if you have seen news, Pakistan has gotten the orders for remdesivir production, for mask production, for exports of PPE, etc. So in a situation where, let's say, if we talk about Pakistan, India, and every other underdeveloped country, they would move to the country which is going to give them more opportunity. Now, in this situation, if USA is giving more orders to, let's say, Pakistan and India, saying that, okay, we'll give you dollars, but you give us PPE suits, you give us masks, you give us etc., etc. items, then Pakistan and India and all other economies like us would move to USA rather than moving to China. Why? Because that's the economic opportunity that we have. Again, one thing is clear as of now, that in my opinion personally, I mean, people differ and that's completely fine with me as well. But one thing is very clear. At this point, no one is looking for political gains or military gains or etc. Everyone's looking for economic gains. Why? Because while there is a health impact of coronavirus, the bigger impact that is the financial impact. Economies like Pakistan, India, which never contracted in the past 70 years, have contracted for the first time this year. So coronavirus has a very, very massive impact in economic terms. And whichever country gives the underdeveloped economies a chance to regain their economic position, they would move to that. And if USA is that, then definitely I'm pretty sure that Pakistan, India, and all of these economies are moving to USA rather than China.
But in all this, don't you see a disruption in the supply chain because of this health crisis? The shipping industry has been slowed down has been slowed down very much. So how you see this problem of maritime trade and cargo services will be tackled?
So there's one thing to clarify here first. The logistical businesses, the supply chain situation was adversely affected over the past 3 months, over the past 2 months, I would say. But as of May and June start, the global economy has started reopening. The global demand has started reopening. And due to that, there is a lot of supply chain activity is regaining. One of the core examples is, if you remember, oil price went negative. And one of the core reasons why oil price went negative was because of the fact that there was a supply chain crisis. There was no storage available, and no one was willing to buy those oil. Now, currently, as of Friday closing price, oil is trading at somewhere around $36 and $37 per barrel, which was 1.5 months ago at negative 37, is now trading at positive 37. So given how economic situation is developing, yes, I completely agree that this maritime trade was impacted over the past few months, specifically during the lockdown time. But as of now, when the global economy is opening, the maritime trade is gaining traction again. There is a lot of trade that is now happening again. There is intra-country trades that are happening again. And there is a ray of hope for this industry.
Thank you. Thank you for summing this up, and thank you for giving us a thought and a sense to how the future will look like. And if I probably summarize what you have tell us and our viewers, the future, there is a hope in the future, and hopefully Pakistan will work, and we won't be able to suffer this much in this time, because we have suffered a lot. And I hope our youth will understand this, and our economic regime will see a shift in a positive direction. Thank you, Shajee, for giving us your precious time. And I would request at the end to give a message for our viewers about the awareness about the COVID-19. How should they act and follow the SOPs?
So first and foremost thing, for everyone, for youth especially, I would say that try to stay at home as much as you can. Don't go out of your home until and unless necessary at all. Lastly, if you have to go out, which is again should be the last resort, make sure that you follow the SOPs. You wear your masks. If you have gloves, if you can get gloves, wear those. And once you get back in your car or get back in your home, make sure that you wash your hand with sanitizer or soap. And again, as there's one saying that coronavirus won't enter your home until you bring it back to your home. So try to stay at home and try to stay safe. That's all I would say for that.
Stay home, stay safe. See you next time. Thank you very much.